All right, there he is. I see him on Zoom, looking good. My good friend Rocky Raczkowski. How you doing, Rocky?
Hey, good morning. Good morning, dude.
Thank you for joining us. For those that don't know you, I mean, you're everywhere. You are the chair of the Republican Party in Oakland County. Been very active in politics, run for a number of seats, and served in the Michigan legislature. You were the majority leader when you were only 28 years old.
Wow.
And that makes you, as if my notes are right, the youngest majority leader ever in the state of Michigan and maybe nationwide. Is that right?
That's true, but that's not my proudest moments.
I know. Your proudest moments about your service in the military, and we know about that.
Absolutely. That's one of those great things when you can put partisanship aside and put on a uniform that brings Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Vegetarians, whoever together as in one combined mission to serve others. And that's probably the proudest moment I've had besides having a great family.
Well, and I remember you coming back from one of your terms and duties in the Middle East, and I just happened to be there at the airport, able to greet you with a lot of other people. That was a great moment for all of us. And I also want to thank you, Rocky. Just let people know who are tuning in that you were kind to give of your time during Veterans Day and come to West Bloomfield for our Veterans Day breakfast, and we really appreciate that. I know you're always able to help out with any veterans cause. And we also a lot of fun watching you on Let It Rip on Channel 2 and hearing you on WJR when you're representing the Republican side of many issues. A lot of fun.
Well, the key here is being nonpartisan as much as possible to make sure that we actually have a direction where we move together, because especially right now during this coronavirus pandemic, we really should be putting partisanship aside. Sometimes we don't see it, but we should be putting partisanship aside. And no matter what happened in the past, we should be working to fix those things in the future and working to help each other out.
Well, maybe this will be a good turning point, because it's to no one's fault. I mean, we could sit here and blame people all day about why we are in such a partisan environment right now, because we are. But maybe this will help motivate people and see that working together is the only way we're going to get through tough times. And maybe if there's any good to this, it's the fact that these times are so tough, we have no choice but to work together.
I would believe that if it were left up to the people. But if you leave it up to the money and the power and the political prowess of D.C. and other areas, the partisanship is there for a specific purpose, to win that power. And to have that power over the gavel, over the ability to make laws. So I wish I was a little bit more optimistic about it. One day maybe we'll see a third party, or we'll see more people join the Republican Party.
Well, I get, the one thing that's really cool about what I'm doing here on our Megacast, by the way, we've got great support over a number of community radio stations, television outlets, Facebook pages. So we're covering a big chunk of real estate with the show every day. And Rocky, I think when things get really local, when we are right down on the ground level, saving lives at the hospital, adding beds over at TCF or at Suburban Showplace, getting our first responders out. When you get right down to the local level, it's a lot easier to put the partisanship aside and solve the problem. So moving ahead.
That's what it's all about. And Dave, I'm not sure if you know this, but I was actually somewhat involved in working out the Suburban Showplace Center here in Oakland County that's going to serve as a base for Oakland County residents for extended care. And when I was in the legislature, I was proud to work on expanding the CON, which is the certificate of need that allows for hospitals to expand, where we had Providence expand in Novi, West Bloomfield, Henry Ford expand in West Bloomfield, and Sinai expand at the Huron Valley Hospital. And I was proud to work on that. One of the sad parts about that was when I was term limited, which I agree with term limits. When I was term limited, the agreement that we cut with some of the hospital CEOs was that they would maintain their presence with their hospitals in Detroit. And if you recall, back in the early 2000s, probably 2002, 2003, 2004, when I was overseas by that time, St. John's Riverside closed down, and then Hutzel Hospital closed down, which was part of the DMC, and that was never part of the agreement. We would have had the beds and maybe perhaps not needed TCF center.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good point. Fortunately, we do have some other really good examples of people that have built big networks here in Michigan. Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield, still with their major
Beaumont
facility.
as well.
Beaumont also. So, on the good side, there are
McLaren and DMC, yep. all four of the big ones.
Yeah,
Beaumont,
they have
McLaren,
done a good job.
And Providence, the Ascension system has been very good as well.
Talk a little bit. I was unaware that you were involved in the Suburban Showplace deal. They are definitely going to now, the word finally announced, I think yesterday, that is going to be another facility where we're going to have additional beds. I was trying to get a hold of Blair Bowman, the owner out there. But if you know the story, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, Blair actually met with the Ascension president, and I know that the commander of the Michigan National Guard, or what they call the TAG, the Adjutant General, and the Army Corps of Engineers talked with Blair, because their positioning is fantastic in service to that area, that underserved area in Western Wayne and as well as Western Oakland County. What's interesting is they're about a half a mile away from the Novi Providence hospital, which would be an assistant hospital if they needed doctors or assistants. You have a major hospital right there, right down the road at Grand River in Novi as well. And what's also interesting is the Suburban Collection Showplace is truly what would be considered a headquarter area, because you've got a hotel that could possibly house, the hotel is on the east side of the complex, that could house individuals coming into Michigan to help with the healthcare situation. Doctors, nurses, or even military medical personnel that would need housing. They'd have the hotel right there. And then you have a couple ballrooms in between the showplace and the hotel, which could serve very easily for a supply distribution network and maintaining of supplies there for distribution throughout the whole state of Michigan. And then on the west side is the actual showplace. As you know, they've got large ceilings, large open spaces, and that showplace is perfectly set up for just an operation where the Army Corps of Engineers did a site survey and they believed that it was appropriate. Well, and then, of course, like I mentioned at the beginning, you're just down the street from Providence Novi, and Providence Novi, being half a mile down the street, served as a great hub for medical assistance in the Oakland County area.
Well, it's really going to be a great service to Oakland County. It's a perfect facility, and from a business standpoint, it's good. I mean, I work in the event business, and it's totally shut down. So they have the capacity there, and kudos to Blair Bowman for making his facility available. And
Blair has done a lot for the community. Not only has he worked in business, but he's done so much for the community, for the entire Novi and southwestern Oakland County region. He's truly a great asset for Oakland County.
Well, no kidding. I mean, he's built that facility, and didn't use public funds to the extent that I'm aware of. And it's a great facility. It gives us a COBO-like, TCF-like venue out in Oakland County. So kudos to him. It's hopefully going to work out great. And before we hand out too many accolades, we've got to do it also for the Army Corps. I mean, unbelievable. And the National Guard, moving resources.
The National
around.
Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers. We should be thanking everyone. When I go to the grocery store with my mask on and my glasses, I even thank every single worker in those grocery stores for being there, resupplying the shelves, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Army National Guard, the National Guard as a whole, actually, in Michigan, and all of our healthcare professionals, from nurse assistants, from the janitorial staff to the doctors and the ER doctors. They're doing an incredible yeoman's work.
Rocky Raczkowski is joining us on the line now via Zoom from, I believe, his home in Troy, and we thank him for joining us. He's the chair of the Oakland County Republican Party and connected to so many other things. We appreciate his thoughts today here on the Megacast. I'm Dave Scott. Tyler Keefe, hard at work in our studio, and we thank you for tuning in on WAHS 89.5, Avondale Community Radio, the Biff in the Bloomfield area, Lakes FM in the West Bloomfield area, our community television station, stations and on Civic Center TV. The reason I called you, Rocky, is that I want to talk about what's going on in Lansing. What a crazy day. I mean, did you ever think that we would have the Michigan legislature convening and having to walk people in one by one, two by two, and try to do it in this environment where we have to keep our physical distancing? And it's got to be a complicated day up there.
It is complicated, but they have to do this. They have to have a presence. The Senate and the House will be appearing today. And like you said, they're keeping their social distances. And I've spoken to a couple of reps and senators about this and confirmed that they will be going in 5 at a time, keeping their social distances to check in. And then the legislature actually will keep a couple reps and a couple senators on the floor, but they've asked all of them to leave and be in their vehicles or ready to leave if they need to. And they were going to pass a couple resolutions by voice vote. And there is unanimity between both parties, both leaders, to pass these resolutions by voice vote. One of them is predominantly focused on making sure that the emergency declaration that the state is under is reviewed every 2 weeks instead of just doing a blanket order of 70 days. We may need 70 days. We may not need 70 days. I'm of the belief that hopefully, if everything goes well, we won't need 70 days, and that it should be reviewed every 2 weeks by the legislature.
Can the legislature do that effectively, Rocky, given how difficult it is to meet?
Oh, absolutely. They're doing it today, as a matter of fact. As I've mentioned, I've spoken to 2 representatives and 2 senators. 2 of the individuals that I've spoken to represent a lot of the regions where you broadcast in. And they specifically said that they've received specific time blocks where they show up, they go in, and they keep their social distances, they check in, and then they leave and go to a safer spot or to their vehicle, and they either listen into the session or wait if they need to be called or go back home.
You know, constitutionally, it makes sense. It makes sense constitutionally.
Oh, it's a requirement.
Well, it is, and it's required in the law that the governor cannot make an emergency declaration and have it go beyond a certain amount of time, which we're getting close to, without a sign-off from the legislature. It makes constitutional sense. I think the governor would like the legislature just to give her as much time as she needs and at her own discretion, and the legislature wants to impose themselves in on the issue, and no reason to get in a big fight over it. Just make it work so the people in the state have what they need, and I assume that's what's going on up in Lansing today. We'll see media reports later on in the day and find out exactly how they voted.
That's exactly what's going on, and hopefully it won't turn into a political show of power. But there are checks and balances between the legislative and the executive branch, and I think the governor's done her responsibility. She carried out her responsibility of putting out the executive order. I wish some of the executive orders would be a little bit more clear, and I wish that there wouldn't be such a turn neighbor against neighbor situation as was created by the Attorney General. But that's what the legislature is there for, to do those checks and balances and to make sure that things are done properly.
You know, there's always going to be difference of opinion. So that's cool. We get it. And it doesn't have to get ugly. I like one of the things that you're involved in on a regular basis on WJR. I just want to congratulate you. When you and Debbie Dingle go at each other on the radio, I know you do it on Channel 2 and let it rip as well. I think that's good. You know, then you guys have very different opinions. You and Debbie have very different opinions, but I get the sense, A, from knowing you, and B, from watching it, that you know, neither of you take any of that personally.
No, and quite frankly, Debbie and I are friends. We can differ politically and still like each other as individuals. I care for her, checked in on her. By the way, the radio show has now moved. It's no longer on WJR. It just happened this last Sunday morning, on Palm Sunday. It's now on the fan radio, DFN, WDFN, on I think it's 11:30 a.m.
It is.
At 9 a.m. in the morning now on Sundays, and Warren Pierce still does it. But we had a good show this last weekend, and Warren tried to make it a little bit more political, and we both basically brought him back into realizing that this is not a Democratic fight or a Republican fight. This is a fight where we all have to come together. We all have to be smart, and we all have to do our proper social distancing, and do what's required of us to make sure that we don't infect others. And also, we also need to keep an eye on our government, that we don't just write a blank check to our government and expect them to take care of us. It's not going to happen that way. We as citizens in this democracy have an important role to play, and that role is to have our representatives do our checks and balances for us, and for us to have our voices heard.
Rocky, well said. And, I can't think of a time in my lifetime, where you and I are both post-World War II, maybe a little bit around 9/11, but 9/11 impacted the psyche of the country, but it did not.
I'm more much 9/11. You're more post-World War II.
Yeah, I get it. But even during 9/11, Rocky, it didn't impact us all directly like this does. It impacts every single one of us.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, I know, because you were in service, and I get that. But I'm just saying that this thing impacts every citizen in every state, whether they serve in the military, whether they're in government or not. It gets so much deeper into every citizen, and it's a great opportunity for all of us to show our citizenship by doing the things that the government is asking us. And it also is, as you said, important that government acts responsibly. And I think we come out of this where it's going to be a very heroic time for each and every one of us here in our country, and we're going to come out strong.
Well, this is Civil War CV, World War CV, where the entire world is trying to fight this. What is it? The president said 182 countries are fighting the coronavirus war, so to speak. But I will share one thing that I was really proud of citizens, because when the governor put out an executive order banning the use of hydroxychloroquine and the Z-Pak combinations and prescriptions of it, and her press people put out an incorrect statement, people peacefully revolted. They wrote letters to the editor. They contacted their representatives, their senators, and very quickly the governor's office corrected that and made sure that it was an anti-hoarding executive order, not an executive order based.
Yeah, I think that thing got so politicized. That drug has been so politicized. But let's give the governor the benefit of the doubt and say she didn't want people that absolutely needed that drug not to be able to get it. And let's hope that every doctor and every person.
That is one thing that I came out, David. That is one thing that I came out and said, that the executive order needs to be corrected, but I don't believe that the governor was banning that drug. And that's where that's what we really need to be doing, is making sure that our government is there still working for us, and that no one individual, no senator, no representative, no governor, no Democrat or Republican has extreme powers during this time.
Rocky, thank you so much. I applaud you. We got through that whole interview, and you are the chair of the Oakland County Republican Party without any partisan talk at all. I appreciate that. Thank you for your opinions.
And I appreciate it as well for you having me on. And if people want more information, they can always jump on oaklandgop.org.
All right. Rocky, thank you very much. Thanks for all that you have done for us, and thank you for joining us today on the Megacast.